Welcome to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, also known as
Snake Bros. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents and striptards and everybody else, all you Adamu out there. It is Brothers of the Serpent podcast coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science in green, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And tonight we have some interesting things to talk about. But first, there's some interesting things happening in the news. some good news stuff, some funny stories, and some annoying stories. Mammoths are gonna save the Arctic.
That's right.
Dude, save us.
What'd you need?
They are being de-extincted.
Pay no attention to the fact that the last time the climate went wacky, they got wiped out.
Come on, Kyle.
Failed to save anything. But they're gonna save us. By what? Packing the ice?
Yeah. So I
walking
guess
around and being really heavy.
they got these genes. They've been working on the DNA and shit of this frozen mammoth baby, and
Not bad.
they're gonna basically
Let's
artificially
make some
inseminate an artificial womb egg thing from another type of elephant that's not extinct.
Yeah, some other
It's-
echinoderm.
what do you call it? Extant.
Extant, yeah.
And grow this hybrid mammoth elephant thing, and try to populate this 20,000 hectare area in
Siberia.
something like that.
So would that be called a mammophant?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so they're gonna the scientists involved have this idea that if they get enough of them to live there, then they will change the climate in the area, because they'll eventually help cause some deforestation and packing the snow and causing the albedo to be lower.
Yeah, they're hoping.
that-
They're hoping that the what was it that they'll deforest the area, because they
Yeah.
want it to turn back into grasslands like it apparently was before, because the canopy of the forests holds too much snow.
Yeah,
which
something
makes
like that.
which makes it bright, and that means it reflects sunlight back into space, which means
Brett's just like, what the shit?
yeah, what the shit?
Wait, they want
what? Yeah, they want to lower the albedo with the mammophants.
mammophants. That's right.
They need 150 million mammophants walking around and eating the trees
And warming the globe. Yeah, warming.
they want to destroy the forest. Think about that. This is going to save the planet by destroying the forest.
If I read that right, I was like, wait a minute. They want to destroy the forest, and then so the grass can come back. And I don't know.
Because the grass, because the snow falls and the grass is taller than the snow, so the snow is not able to reflect as much light back into space.
I don't know, man.
That's pretty funny.
Cloning mammophants to kill forests to save the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, some other scientists somewhere else are looking at the one of the heat signatures from the I can't remember what it's called. PETM? PETM?
The Pino?
The PETM?
Was it Pliocene? What?
Yeah, let me pull this up here.
Pliocene.
Anyway, these guys have come up with something really just amazing.
Yeah.
They think, hey, there could have been an ancient high civilization before humans on Earth.
Yeah.
Because they saw how hot the Earth got one time, and they were like, maybe that global warming was caused by some civilization
that
that
was
burning
also
fossil fuels.
and coal and just being terrible, just like us.
Yeah. This is from the Metro.
I see ya.
.co.uk. Was there another civilization on Earth before humans? Scientists investigate. No, they don't. 56 million years ago, the Earth warmed far above the temperatures we experience today, and ice at the poles melted.
Could the event, the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, be evidence of global warming caused by an extinct civilization which ruled Earth before mankind? It sounds like the kind of crackpot conspiracy to be found on ancient alien UFO sites.
No.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
But scientists have seriously investigated the idea.
No, they haven't.
Professor Adam Frank of the University of Rochester writes in The Atlantic that the investigation could offer insight into how to find alien life or about our impact on our planet. No, it won't.
No, yeah.
There's a conundrum here. If an earlier species' industrial activity is short-lived, we might not be able to easily see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if it was just an impact, you know.
Yeah.
What you need?
Anyway, basically...
The show observer has posted a massive infographic. He's so annoyed at this story.
Yeah.
Yeah. That looks right.
65 million years of climate change, folks. Anyway, yeah, basically the bottom line is they see that the globe got really warm, and so the only thing that these scientists can think of that could have possibly caused that, other than the sun, no, they didn't even think about the
Yeah,
sun.
the sun's not. This is not part of the equation.
Is burning fossil fuels. And then they also say near the end, they're like, so a whole like fossil fuel burning, you know, global warming catastrophe caused by, you know, intelligent beings
Could cause new fossil fuels to be made.
could like by destroying the planet, they can actually cause all these new fossil fuels to be made, which is what we're burning right now, about to destroy the planet and ourselves, and cause another one for a
An
future.
endless cycle of destruction and death and climate change caused by us.
Yeah, but you know what's crazy? What they're actually admitting in this story is that it didn't destroy the planet.
Why is it still here?
It did not destroy the planet, folks. It's still here. So, anyway,
Yeah.
we're all gonna die.
I wonder what these hypothetical intelligent beings would have been. When was this? The Cephas? Cephas?
Cephalopods. Come on.
Clearly they were Cephas. When was it again? It wasn't 65 million years ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it was.
Or wait.
are they talking about the KT
sorry,
event?
Sorry. No.
Okay.
No. 56.
56 million.
Not 65. Sorry, I was a little dyslexic.
Okay, so there's the KT event.
56 million years ago.
The KT event happens. That's the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary that kills all the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, and then a short, what? 7 or 8? What is it? 56.
11.
11. Yeah. I'm bad at math.
Is that right? We're going back.
Gotta go backwards.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever, it's 11. Or 9. It's one different than 10.
65. Yeah. It's probably not.
Because if it was 55, it would be 10.
So only a few million years later.
So it's 11.
Yeah. Then something happened that was okay. So 65 million years ago, it was an enormous comet or meteor. Petum. Eocene optimum. Okay, so what? And they call it the optimum, but it was really hot. Way too hot.
I don't know. We're looking at this infographic.
Yeah.
It's not good for an audio show. So, but the infographic
Try
will
to
be
describe this infographic.
It will be in the show
words.
notes. So if you're wondering what we're wondering about, just look at the show notes
Yeah.
at this infographic.
It's got a lot of info, but it's.
But still, dude, 11 million years is a long freaking time. We don't need that.
I'm just saying that, like, they acknowledged that 65 million years ago there was this enormous warming event and
Yeah.
then catastrophic destruction, and they know it was an impact. Like, everybody agrees now, even though when they first came out with this theory, that everyone was like, "Oh my God, this is," you know, like, of course it's not. But so they're looking at another one a few million years later and saying, "No, this must be an intelligent civilization."
Yeah. But on this graph, it looks like it's sort of a slow rise here.
Well, that spike right there is, I think, what they're talking about.
That?
Right there, bam.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, it was definitely because of, you know, 6 billion individuals burning fossil fuels.
Yeah, it was sepals.
Yeah. They were putting around in their motor squids. Under the ocean.
They're SU squids. Sport utility squids.
Oh my god. Okay. So, more dumb news. Let's see what else we got here.
Dumb news.
Actually, this is not.
God.
This is not dumb. Well, some of it is, but
Okay, this is cool,
This
yeah.
is cool. So, trillions upon trillions of viruses fall from the sky.
Every day. And they're constantly rewriting your code.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool story.
what viruses do.
This is in the New York Times. So yeah, a team of scientists are starting to figure out there's a stream of viruses circling the planet above the planet's weather systems. But well, I guess they'd already figured this out. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's below the level of airline travel. Very little is known about this realm, and that's why the number of deposited viruses stunned the team in Spain. Each day, they calculated some 800 million viruses cascade onto every square meter of the planet. Wow. Holy.
How come we're not sick all the time?
Most of the globe-trotting viruses are swept into the air by sea spray, and lesser numbers arrive in dust storms. Unimpeded by friction with the surface of the Earth, you can travel great distances, and so intercontinental travel is quite easy for viruses. It wouldn't be unusual to find things swept up in Africa being deposited in North America. So, basically, they're saying we're all gonna die.
That's like coming from the assumption that they must come from the surface. Space.
Well, yeah, they actually mentioned that here. Generally, it's assumed these viruses originate on the planet and are swept upward, but some researchers theorize that viruses actually may originate in the atmosphere. There's a small, and then in parentheses, there's a small, totally wacko group of researchers who believe viruses may even have come here from outer space. No, I added the wacko.
Totally wacko group.
An idea known as panspermia. So whatever the case, viruses are the most abundant entities on the planet by far.
Okay, wait. The viruses are panspermia? I thought panspermia was something else, but anyway.
Cool.
Like
This is a very obviously small group of researchers that only made their way into this via parenthetical. Okay. Anyway, those people were talking about panspermia, but not the guys in this article.
Right.
But yeah, that is crazy, dude.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty cool picture on here I want to get for the show notes too, with it's got like these little blue screen viruses attached to it.
Blue screen viruses of death.
Attached to a bacterial cell wall. It just looks like there's like somebody's finger in the side of it. But anyway.
It's a paramecium.
Yeah, so they talk about how the viruses are essential to everything, from our immune system to our gut microbiome, the ecosystems on land and sea, climate regulation, and the evolution of all species. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the viruses are like,
Be careful, Exile.
they're like little machines, and they can go in and rewrite the DNA. But, like, I kind of am with Rupert Sheldrake on this, that like our DNA codes for proteins, like that's the bricks, but it doesn't give you the blueprints for the house, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It tells you how to make the bricks for the house, but it doesn't tell you how to build the house out of those bricks. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what those viruses are doing. But again, that we may only be looking at the first level of code on the DNA. I remember there have been articles saying that like DNA could be used to store enormous amounts of information inside of it. That they could one cell's DNA can hold like petabytes of freaking data. So the A, B, C, D, whatever the crap they look at when they're looking at DNA may only be the first level of code or of information from it.
Yeah. So Brad's saying they can rewrite code without making it stick. It's like
GC. Sorry. I just figured, it would be ABC.
I just think this is really cool. Here's another snippet. researchers recently identified an ancient virus that inserted its DNA into the genomes of four-limbed animals that were human ancestors. So we reported on that
Oh, yeah.
a while back. That snippet of genetic code called ARC, A-R-C, is part of the nervous system of modern humans and plays a role in human consciousness. Right? Remember
Oh,
that?
right.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this virus made us think.
False.
So nerve communication, memory formation, and higher order thinking is what they think, and that's based on their studies of the brain, right?
Yeah.
So between 40% and 80% of the human genome may be linked to ancient viral invasions. So it's just cool, like thinking about this, like 800 million viruses land on every square meter of the Earth every day, and they're editing shit all the time.
Yeah.
So this is, we were talking before the show about how like it kind of ties into the like how do we get better and better at sports all the time? Like everybody's getting faster and stronger. And,
yeah.
all of this shit. And it'd be interesting if there's like, viruses are just editing us on every level of our biology.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the time. So it's an interesting way to look at the idea of evolution too, as opposed to survival of the fittest or adaptation.
Right.
It's more like you're not adapting if you're just being edited. It's
Yeah, that's why like it's an interesting idea to think that the viruses are like an agent of something that's doing this on purpose, right? Like if you're editing code in a computer, you have to have tools to go in and actually like open the code that's there and then make the changes and like save it, close it, right?
Yeah.
So like the viruses are kind of like they're little nanomachines that are specifically designed to go and change code. But if consciousness is interacting with the universe all the time on a fundamental level, viruses are a great tool for consciousness to use. Like you can build them from the ground up. Viruses are basically just really complicated molecules, and then it can send those in to edit the large life forms that it's been fucking around with. It's like
that's going to be my new cut down though. Like, what, dude? Like, obviously, some ancient viruses never attacked you and made you more able to conduct and regulate synaptic firing in your brain. So you're obviously an idiot.
right. Well, learn how to think, bro. I mean, that was like 30,000 years ago. Come on. I like the idea that viruses are a tool of the creative force.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
So clearly there are black hat and white hat hackers out there.
Yeah.
Because like you've got all these retroviruses that are coming in and editing things and changing stuff, and then you have things like Ebola.
Yeah.
And HIV or whatever. And yeah. Brett's saying they're malware. I think they're more than malware. Those are.
Hey, whoa.
What?
Careful. Don't offend anyone. Call that shit malware. That's why Brett doesn't have a microphone.
That's right. I'd say these are destructive things. Malware is something that gets on there and annoys you. It's like, would you like to buy this? Would you like to buy this? Or it's a key logger. Yeah, they're just viruses.
But still, it's cool thinking can they travel through space? Can they?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, they're molecules, right?
Right. So if there were tons of them being like thrown out somewhere, they're just like floating around all in outer space, and they just land on planets and start editing stuff.
Yeah. Like the gas giants would be great virus building places.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they have all the materials, and like these crazy storms and shit. Like that eye on Jupiter. It could be just like generating billions of viruses all the time and then just spewing them out. It's like just throwing viruses at us all the time.
We'd have to look back into the ancient texts and find out, which quote-unquote gods were like editing humans and stuff.
Yeah.
That's where the viruses come from.
Yeah. So, okay, this reminded me. Did you look at that the Vajra thing that I was talking about earlier? Like, okay, so we were going back and forth with the Thunderbolts project, right?
Yeah.
And
we were talking about this whole idea of lightning bolts of the gods. And there's this weird thing, like, and I looked at this a couple of years ago, and I was like, okay, what the fuck is going on with this? But there's in the Indian or Hindu, I guess, the Hindu text, the Vedic text, they call it the Vajra, right? And it's a weapon of Rama. You know, he uses like a spear, but it's this weird thing like that he holds, and it has these 3 prongs on either side.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I sent you a bunch of pictures of that.
Yeah.
Well, Zeus is also holding it. You look at the old Babylon, Assyrian, Akkadian, and Sumerian stuff. They have the old, cylinder seals and other things showing them holding these 3-pronged.
Yeah, double-sided 3-pronged.
Yeah.
Shammer.
They look like,
things.
Vajras. Like, it's this weapon of the gods or whatever. And it opens, right? The Indian depictions of the Vajra now, they all show it closed, so that the 3 prongs on the ends are shut, right? But like a long time ago, like in the ancient past, when there was this enormous war that they talk about in the Mahabharata and the Rig Veda and shit, he opened the ends of it, and that made it incredibly dangerous. Like anything he did with it was just horribly destructive, right? And it's like it's Zeus's lightning bolt. Like if you look at the Greek depictions of it, this is literally Zeus's lightning bolt. That's his power, and it was like they would talk about how Zeus could hurl lightning bolts and destroy shit. And whenever they have a depiction of him, he's holding this thing that looks just like the Vajra, right? Yeah. But it's like they show it as it looks very much like a plasma form, like right. Like if you just look at the tool, because the Indians have it very intricate and shit. They've got this very intricate version of it, and they all kind of look the same. It looks like a plasma form, and I was looking through all the plasma forms trying to find one that kind of matched it. Yeah. But I couldn't. But the idea that it opens, and becomes incredibly deadly, but now it's closed and shit. Like I wish that we could get a plasma guy on here and be like, okay, what is this, right? Is this possible in plasma science? Like, there's some form that if the ends are open, it's just like, holy fuck, and and if it's closed, you're okay, right? I thought that was fascinating. It's like more clues in the ancient depictions of everything all over the world.
Yeah, for sure. The shaman thing that we were talking about, like that plasma form it just looks exactly like the depictions of the shaman, and there's like all these. A lot of the petroglyphs we were looking at in Moab looked like that. Yeah.
Yep. Arms up, legs out, and then the 2 circles on either side. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy shit.
He's got the head, and he's got his enormous shaman boner, right?
Yeah.
Plasma boner? I don't know what it is. Crime boner? Something like that. I think this the Vajra thing was sparked because you posted a picture, like in our like our Snake Bros chat. You posted a picture of the Peruvian candelabra.
Yes.
Geoglyph, and you were like, "This is a plasma form or whatever."
Well, it looks like multiple ones, like because each prong candelabra has like these little things, and I was looking at all these different plasma forms, and they have these little bulbous aspects to them, and
so And I'm just saying, like, so in the last show, we kind of talked about how these lightning bolts of the gods, these plasma forms, could be the reason why we have like higher metals, like weird metals and shit like that, woven into the crust, rather than down in the core. Right. And like, I view Peru as an enormous mining operation, right? Like you can look at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku and like it looks like it was a machine. It was a port city. And there's like all these ancient mines all over the place there for gold and various
and a lot of the mountaintops, right, are like flattened.
Yeah, flattened.
Right? They're just the whole top of the mountain's just gone.
And they have all those towers that are called chulpas or whatever. Yeah. That have no entrance. They're just like a solid tower and a rounded top, and there's a hole in the top, and then there's a little bitty hole at the bottom, like it was a smelter.
Yeah.
I remember talking. Like you could dump ore in there as it was like burning whatever you were burning in there. You dump ore in there, and at the bottom of that little hole, it would just the pure metal would come pouring out.
Oh man, that's cool.
so those are all along these high areas, you know, in Peru. And like people were like, well, you know, they were signal towers or they were tombs. Of course, there's the tombs because they find bodies in them, but those are intrusive.
Right.
You know? But like, if Peru is a mining operation and we're thinking about the thunderbolts of the gods causing crazy metals and other things in the crust, like maybe, and I kind of said this in the last podcast, I was like, so, because I've always wondered, like, how the fuck did people find, how do you initially find, like, you know, weird metals deep underground? How do you know they're down there? Like, you know, I mean, how, like, we have ways of doing it now, like, but a lot of times, if you really look into it, the modern, like, mining companies, they kind of look for ancient mining sites. That's kind of how they do it.
No kidding.
Yeah, like if you're going and you like the place where you're gonna mine has signs of ancient mining, you're like, yes, because you know that it's gonna be good, right?
Huh.
So like, who was the first guy that went around and actually found all the sites, and how did they do it? And like that, you posting that picture of the candelabra and saying it was a plasma form, I'm like, if these thunderbolts of the gods caused the metals and shit, then maybe this is a sort of a sign that like will tell you what the metals are and where they are.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why it's all weird looking. It's like non-symmetrical and all this shit because it's got multiple different symbols in there for different plasma forms. And if you knew what those plasma forms were and like where they had impacted or wherever, you know that you would find these particular kinds of materials in the ground.
Yeah.
If you knew how to look for like lightning bolt strike sites, right?
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's really cool to think about. Wow.
In the body.
It's like, yeah, it's like, I mean, why would they make this massive sign on the side of the hill?
Yeah.
Like because is that one of the ones you can see from the ground, or is that?
You have to look at it from the ocean. Like the only way you can see it really is because that hill that you're looking at, the picture is always taken from the water, because that hill slopes down from the high desert down directly to the sea, right? So like those pictures are always taken from out in the ocean. So that's really like if you're up on the land, you would be looking at it upside down. It would be really close to you and hard to see.
And how is it made? Like, is that one dug out? Or?
Clearly it was sleds.
No, I mean, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I'm not asking what was the technique. I'm asking what. So looking at the picture, it's not clear. Like, was it dug out? Was it piled up?
I think that
was it the same deal with like the Nazca lines where they just like removed some surface?
No, so like
it's dug out.
So so they dug like these trenches in this hard packed. It looks sandy, but it's really hard packed, right? And they dug these sharp trenches and then like over time it became worn by wind. So
how big is that thing?
It's enormous. It's really
Stay in
big.
the light.
Dang, it's freaking crazy, dude. That mountain is so smooth.
Yeah, it's a giant dune.
That's awesome. So like,
so you can see that the land slopes down and just drops off that cliff into the ocean.
Yeah, it seems like. So then it would have been made as a symbol for seafarers or whatever.
Yeah, it's like when you see that symbol, you know that you're close to the place where you like the port. There's a bay or something. There's a place because all along Peru right there, it's just cliffs straight down to the water. There's nowhere to kind of dock your ship. You just have these massive cliffs coming straight up out of the water, and then these desert mountains on top of those cliffs. And so like that symbol tells you that you're close to a port, which is still used today because it's the only fucking port. Only place that you can use to dock ships.
So it's 595 feet tall, or long, I guess.
Yeah.
And it can be seen from 12 miles out, but all land can be seen from 12 miles
12 miles is about when the horizon takes over. Yeah. So basically it can be seen all the way out to the edge of, possible vision, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're up in a plane, you probably could see it for long ways. Like you could probably see it from really far away.
Yeah. But it's still a cool idea, like...
and if you like filled it with gasoline and lit it on fire, then you could probably see it from really far at night.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea that it's like the idea that so the the plasma form, like thinking of that happening to the planet, like based on the electric universe idea, creating
that's
metal,
clearly
that kind of stuff.
three different types of. Like I'm looking at that as like 3 different strikes, right? A single source, but then like 3 different things happen. And, like there's the central one, and then there's 2 on either side, and those 2 are not the same. And so like, what were they mining? They were getting tin, copper, and something else.
Yeah. I don't know. I still don't know enough about these plasma forms. I don't really understand how they take shape and how you can look at it. Where is it? What is?
Oh yeah, they were saying like if we see them, they're going to be enormous and in the sky.
Oh.
Like that's why everybody all over the world saw them, because they would be, and in some cases there would be shitloads of them, right? Like the shaman shapes would be like moving through the sky, so they would be like they're dancing or whatever. Shitloads.
So they're not actually like hitting the ground. They're just.
Well, no, but like also in the Thunderbolt's idea, like some lightning bolts do strike the ground. So if there's a plasma form associated with that, right? Because you would have plasma forms in the sky, and you get these huge like arcs. So you could.
I don't understand why they take these forms in the sky, and like how are they reproducing this in the lab? I got to do more research.
Right. Well, okay. So the aurora borealis is kind of a plasma form.
Okay.
Right. And it takes a very specific. It has that weird, like, undulating sort of like manta ray edge, right? The weird.
Oh yeah.
It goes like this, and you can see it goes forward, and then it's just like. Right.
Okay.
So it's very specific, and it's associated with that specific kind of energy output from the sun, the solar wind, hitting the poles. So presumably, other types of similar kinds of energy hitting the planet in different ways would cause other forms of colors in the sky, and then sometimes if there's enough energy, it would like arc all the way to the ground.
Wow.
And kill everybody and burn everything down.
All right.
Yep.
We're gonna take our first break.
Yep. That's a good first segment. Oh man, got
Light
ancient-
snakes.
Yeah, I just want to know what the plasma form for snakes is.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming back to you not live from the 10x10x10 Tangent Cube of Science. I know what the Nazca lines are all about. Space! It was an ancient civilization that was trying to fix the desert by increasing the albedo.
I'm in space.
To cool it down. It was ancient scientists. They're like, if we flip over all these rocks, it'll cool the place down, and then we'll grow trees and we'll have a forest.
They cloned titanosaurs and had them walk through the plane dragging their tails.
That's right.
And they made the Nazca line.
Yeah.
In order to change the climate.
That's what it was all about.
They were like, it's too fucking dry here. We need more rain. Some apatosaurs and titanosaurs can do it if they drag their tails.
Yep.
Yeah. And we should flatten those mountains over there too.
Yeah, because it'll reflect the sunlight.
That's
and
right.
It'll bring us forests.
That's right. Have you? The Atacama Desert is full of weird geoglyphs, like not just the Nazca lines on the Nazca Plateau, but like if you go down into the Atacama in Chile, there's like the Atacama Giant. Have you seen that geoglyph? It's like one of the biggest geoglyphs in the world, and it's a human form or whatever. And he's got these weird like lines on his face, like these triple lines or whatever. Like it looks like he's wearing gear of some kind. And he's a humongous geoglyph of a giant. And there's lots of other glyphs around him too. But yeah, and it's just in the middle of nowhere in this incredibly arid. The Atacama is like one of the most arid places on the planet. Like the Nazca Plateau, it gets like 0.0. 3 inches of rain a year or something like that.
Dang.
It's just pebbles and dirt and nothing. And so you have to wonder, like, who in their butt flaps ran way out into this?
Who in their right butt flaps?
Yeah. Like, yeah. No one in their right butt flap would go out in that desert. Seriously.
What's it called?
The Atacama Giant. It's a really interesting looking dude. We can put it in the show notes. If you've seen the Nazca quote-unquote spaceman, you know what I'm talking about? He kind of looks like that, but he's much larger. And he sort of looks like the Cardiff Giant. Have you seen those? The Cardiff Giant in England? You know, England has these enormous geoglyphs too, but they're beautiful. They're done in like white stone on, you know, this perfectly mowed green grass that England has everywhere.
That's the place to make a giant.
That's right.
geoglyph,
Like, be like, somebody mowed like all these thousands of acres. Let's go out there with some beautiful bright white stone and make geoglyphs.
That's awesome.
Yeah. There. Atacama Giant. Look at that.
Looks like a fox.
Or he's like, I look at him and think Jed Killer. Like,
Yeah, he does look like he's good killer. It's more plasma forms.
Yeah, I mean, look at like his ankles and his arms. You know, he's got these lines through his joints.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of reminds me also of the.
What does the giant say?
What did the giant say? He kind of reminds me of who's the old school AI that like would skip and shit. It was a TV thing. What the hell is his fucking name?
I don't know. But he's got these whiskers. It looks like whiskers.
Yeah, they look like whiskers, and then he's got a spiky haircut.
Yeah. That's
Max Headroom. That's what he reminds me of. Max Headroom, right? You remember that guy?
No.
He's just a head in this weird, floating in this weird background or whatever. And it was an actor, but they were, you know, back in the '80s, and they were pretending like that he was a computer AI. But he would skip, right? He would try to talk to me like, it was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean MTV. That's right. Max Headroom.
Yeah. That's cool.
And it's huge, and that's. I mean, look at that.
And there's like another creature like next to him.
Yeah, there's
triangular head.
There's symbols all around him, and
Looks like
some
a little tail.
Yeah, they're deerfizz, and you know, probably mammothants out there.
Yeah. So what were you saying about during the break? You
There
were
he is.
saying about the band of holes.
Okay, so we had talked about the idea of these like enormous thunderbolts striking somewhere in the area and like leaving deposits of stuff. Well, the Nazca Plateau has all these strange forms in the desert now. Like, you know, they've determined that people went out there and spread the rocks out of the way because it's clear a couple inches down. You have this dark rubble on top. If you clear down, you get white, and it's kind of like that here, right? The like upper layer of the limestone is like this dark blue, but if you kind of scrape that away, you get this bright white or yellowish stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like that. It's just all this rubble, and people have gone and cleared it away. They say. I'm not sure that's what really happened. But there are cairns at the corners and shit like that of some of them, right? And then there's the two different kinds: the animals, or the different like actual forms, and then there's just shitloads of these enormous like geometric shapes. Some of them are like, I know one of them is like 30 kilometers long, and it just goes straight over top of crossing everything in its path, you know, like in typical shaman road fashion. It just doesn't, it just goes perfectly straight. Well, kind of off to the, let's see, to the north of that, if you go northwards, yeah, the Band of Holes is a very strange formation or something. No one is really sure what it is. That starts like down. Okay, when you're looking at this area, there are these valleys that have rivers in them, and they're beautiful green. And there's usually cities and shit like that down in there. But then as soon as you get out of the valley and you kind of get up into the highlands, everything turns gray, and there's no plants whatsoever. It becomes arid and shit like that. So the Band of Holes starts at the edge of green,
in one of these valleys, and it just goes for miles and miles and miles across like chasms and gorges and like just really, really impassable territory. Like, obviously, I haven't ever been there, but all the stuff that I've read about it, people are like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to like walk on this shit when it's flat, but this formation goes across like these deep like gorges and chasms and cliffs and valleys and shit like that in this gray. And I guess what it's real slippery because there's nothing holding it all together, right?
Yeah.
There's no growth of any kind, like grass or whatever, that holds all the soil together. Yeah, there's no moisture either, so it's like you start walking down and everything starts to move with you and shit, and next thing you know, you cause an avalanche, and you're like, what? You're like riding an avalanche down this cliff or whatever. So these holes, and they're not really holes, they're kind of like,
Just like little pits.
yeah, if you can get pictures from ground level, they look like pockmarks that are 4 to 6 feet across, and they're just sort of like
Like a funnel or something.
yeah, like what are those things called? The
Antlion?
Yeah, like giant ant lions, right? But the stuff they're made out of are like pebbles and rocks and shit up to this big. It's not sand. Yeah. Now some of them. Okay, so Brett's posting pictures up here. Some of them have been lined later on by people for whatever reason, but most of them don't look like that. Like that one's been lined with rocks. And that may have been to hold the walls back so they could dig down into it because people think there's treasure in them. Okay. But if you look at most of them, they're just sort of these like weird antlion holes. And they're in a very strange pattern. Like they
look like almost like a grid pattern, but they're not perfect.
Yeah, and it changes. Like there'll be a section of it where they're all kind of in this pattern where they're sort of diagonal like this,
Yeah.
and then that'll stop, and then it'll be keep going, and it's always the same width. The band like goes across stuff, and it never changes in width or whatever. So there's always the same number of holes across the entire band.
Yeah, I've looked at this on Google Earth, and
Yeah.
I should go back and do that and measure it because I'm wondering how wide that whole band.
Oh, yeah, I did all that too. Yeah, I measured all that stuff for that. I posted a gigantic above top secret thread about this.
Oh yeah.
Where, yeah, it was ridiculous. I was like, look at these holes in the pattern, and then look at these weird like rock art paintings in Australia with the same pattern on there. It was weird to me. Like, you look at the band of holes and it's got this strange pattern of circles, and then you look at the only other place I've seen that pattern is in Australia. These ancient rock art paintings.
Like that. Like the Aborigines still make art like that by putting little dots.
And yes, and there's very few of them, and they're very, very fucking old. But you see, like, there's a guy standing there, and there's these dots, and they look just like the band of hole pattern. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I made this enormous thread about it on ATS, and people were like, "Oh, this is a great thread, but no, no."
Okay, so the pits are about 1 meter in diameter, 50 to 100 centimeters deep.
Hey, Imperial, please. Imperial, please. Like, what are we, Europe? Come on.
They are arranged in discernible blocks or segments along a band that varies in width from 14 to 21 meters, with an average width of about 19 meters.
I don't know what any of that means.
The whole thing goes for about 1.5 kilometers.
Wait, runs up a hill? Okay. It kind of ends in this weird. It looks like there's a hole or a giant pit where
I mean, there's a lot. Like in this picture, it's going up and
lots of
down
hills,
over
bro.
all these little hills.
It's like it goes uphill for 1.5 kilometers and then goes across a bunch of shit for 6 or 7 kilometers, something like that.
Yeah, that thing's crazy, and there's like nothing anywhere nearby it. It's just like way out in here.
Yeah. So okay. So when I was doing research on this, I like got on Google Earth, obviously, and I was getting extremely high resolution images of the entire thing. And I sort of strung them all together to make this huge, like, long, tall photograph.
Yeah.
Right. But you have to scroll up to see the whole thing.
Well,
But on the right, about halfway along the band,
on another hill. It looks like, okay, so the band looks like it gets to a sort of plateau and it stays there. But to the right, it looks like it's either slopes down or it slopes up. It's hard to tell, you know.
Yeah, from Google Earth. Yeah.
But there is definite ancient ruins there. Like I saw all kinds of little square,
okay.
like city pattern. Okay,
Yeah.
just like built into the mountainside or cliff wall or whatever it was. And I pointed it out to a bunch. I was like, "What is this? You know, like it's not flagged, it's not marked or whatever." And I'm like, "I discovered it," but no one cared. I was like, "Look at that! It's right there." Yeah. So there's a good picture of it.
Man, that's just crazy, dude.
Yeah. And nobody knows what it's for. It looks to me like either a systematic attempt to find materials, right? So like
if they were punching. Okay, so there's like a farming implement that's called a drill
yeah.
that it basically has all the. It's for seed, like planting seeds.
Yeah.
And it goes along and it punches all these little holes in the ground as you
Right.
drive it, and it shoves the seed down in the hole.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like something like that.
Right, but writ large.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
Of
Enormous. But it does look like something huge rolled across the landscape for a couple of kilometers or whatever that means. Miles. Let's see if I can pull this up.
crazy.
Yeah, let's see if I can pull this up on Earth here. Can you entertain people while I look for this?
19 meters wide.
Which is
I don't know if I could do that, Russ. Dang it! I had to take over the show now. The Russ is gone. All right.
snakes. Snakes. I was gonna try to look this up.
Yeah, Google Earth is like, it's a good pastime. Is like I put Google Earth up on the projector screen in my house.
Yeah,
and I turn off all the roads, all the names and everything. So I'm just looking at Earth.
Yeah. And they're like, "What is that?
Yeah.
What is that?"
And I'm just cruise, dude.
Yeah, and then you turn stuff on, and like everybody knows what it is. Like all the.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun if you have all that stuff turned on.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then I would save a bunch of photos that I would get, or like pictures of stuff that just looked like mainly the deserts in the Middle East, in Africa. They just look freaking crazy.
Well, the stuff you found in Antarctica was crazy too. That long snowmobile path.
Yeah.
That ended in the
Snowmobile path.
Snowmobile. Ended at the.
It looked like some kind of wreckage, or
Yeah.
possibly an impact.
Or maybe a mountaintop sticking out of the ice or something.
Yeah. But yeah, there was like it looked like they made a landing strip and everything.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So I'm entertaining everyone while Russ is looking for something.
So one of the ideas, right, was the band of holes could be caused by some sort of strange electrical strike.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's like,
Or that was a way for them to look for materials. You know, they were searching for materials because they knew there was a strike somewhere in this area. And
it's just that, like, so much of this weird, unexplained, unknown, ancient stuff looks like machinery to me.
Yes.
Like
caused by machinery.
Or caused by machinery. Like this, the band of holes, like the Nazca lines. Pumapuku looks like machinery parts.
Yeah, or like it used to have machineries there.
Yeah, the Great Pyramid looks like a machine.
Yeah.
Just so much of that
It's a
stuff.
machine. Speed machine.
Okay. Just like those scientists were saying, if there was maybe like a really high society, had a high technology, for short enough a period of time, we might not be able to detect it. Meanwhile, there are pyramids everywhere.
Yeah, just looking for a little sign here, guys. Just, you know, some kind of little sign. I can't find it.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for the. Oh, here it is. You see that?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's
Square thing?
clearly a city, like, right? Look at that shit.
The terracing? Are you like?
Yeah, on that mountainside, like, no other mountains look like that.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's all terrace.
You can see there's a big square right there, and then
The town square.
And like so that's a big slope. So I was thinking those are all foundations for buildings.
Kind of like what's the
Stay
place
in the line.
high up on the mountain that nobody knew about in Peru?
Oh, Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu, yeah.
Yeah,
It's all
I mean-
terrace.
Yeah, I think that's clearly ancient.
Yeah, that's definitely.
And no one's looking at it. There's not even a road to this place.
Well, no one goes there because it's all desert.
That's right. It's like hot and no one cares.
We need to clone something, spread it out in that desert to bring it back. Birds.
I think,
Jackbirds.
like, I wonder what it was like during the Ice Age when the sea level was like 400 feet lower. Like, that would make it worse, right? Because it would be even higher in elevation.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the climate, who knows what it was, you know, it was probably so different. It could have, there would be totally different currents, totally different, like, weather patterns. So, like, when we were in Moab, you know, the story was that the monsoons used to come up from the Gulf of Mexico
Yeah.
and, like, go all the way up into Moab, and it would just rain all the time, and it was huge forests and all this kind of stuff. Well, now it's a freaking arid, high desert.
Yeah.
Can I not have
But-
But I think the underlying geography probably looked the same, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I'm just saying that
That there was a forest there during the monsoon period.
right. So there could have been some weather patterns during the Ice Age, but even though the sea levels were way lower, that
Yeah.
brought moisture. And if you had enough moisture, you're probably gonna have
Yeah.
vegetation.
The other weird thing about the Peruvian and Chilean deserts there, the Atacama and the Nazca area, is that it's incredibly high in saltpeter. Like there are enormous salt and saltpeter mines just in the desert, where like salt just grows up out of the sand, and there are other places where they mine nitrates and saltpeter for gunpowder, and bombs and shit. Like during World War II, it was a huge resource for
And
you
this
know,
is in Peru.
yeah, and in Chile and shit, like they have these huge saltpeter mines, right? And it's like, it's the only place in the world where it's like that, where there's just like explosives like laying on the surface, you know, like nitrates
crazy.
just on the surface. And it's supposedly from, you know, an ancient ocean or whatever, like everything. It's sedimentary. The materials are. It's like, you know, so you have these huge salt flats where like literally gigantic salt crystals are just everywhere. Like, you know, think the salt flats in Utah and in Nevada where they do all the testing.
Yeah.
Like that's the same thing. It's like, it's just salt left over from some ancient sea.
How come we don't have that here? Like, it's just
What, in here?
yeah, in Texas.
I think because you have to be in the basin part. Like, so we're like a lifted plateau, and all the salt water flowed off, or whatever was the
okay.
idea. Like, well, wherever it went, if it was
So where it dried up.
yeah, where it dries up, like the Salt Lake City in Utah would be one once it dries
So
out.
it has to be some place that where the water sat and just evaporated.
Right, like is it the Dead Sea in the Middle East? They have one of those because it's in this basin and it's incredibly salty.
Yeah.
You know, so much so that like you jump in and just go, and you like just float on the surface. You see all those pictures of people just like laying on it, like you don't need a raft wherever, you just lay down. Most of you sticks out of the water because it's so salty.
Yeah, but that's crazy. But this is in the it's high up
in the highlands, yeah,
So-
right.
But that must have gotten pushed up too
Yeah,
after it dried out.
But most of Peru looks like, I mean, the entire Andes, I'm pretty sure. I mean, you know, obviously this is not going to be, not conventional geologists are going to completely disagree with this, but to me, the Andes are brand new. Like they're brand fucking new, right? They probably happened, if not in the last cataclysm, the one right before that, like 5 million years ago.
yeah, this is why the Lake Titicaca water line is at an angle.
Right. Yeah, you can see an ancient shoreline is like 30 degrees. How did that work? But it's also like Lake Titicaca is a fucking like puddle, you know? It really is a huge puddle of seawater that has turned brackish over time, right? Because it's just just been sitting up there and it's just been getting fed by rain, and it doesn't have a lot. So like oceans are salty because all the rivers like pick up, salts and then dump them into the oceans constantly.
That's what you were telling me in a podcast just recently.
Yeah. And you're like, well, like rivers aren't salty, so how do they turn the ocean salty? Because the ocean has to hold all that shit forever, right?
Right.
But like Lake Titicaca has saltwater or marine animals in it.
Yeah.
Marine animals in it that have like, it has like the seahorses, right? The only known freshwater seahorses in the world. And it's at 11,000 feet above sea level.
Wait, so Brett's saying nitrogen is in large amounts in seawater from urine?
Yeah. Yeah, another way to make, like explosives is to boil your piss. Like, you can get phosphorus and nitrogen and shit like that from it, yeah.
Yeah.
Smells really bad though, so I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have all these weird, like it's in the highlands, okay, and but you have these weird, what looks like ocean bottom shit, nitrates, salts, and stuff like that. But you're way up above sea level. I mean, you're 5, 6, sometimes 10,000 feet above sea level, and then you have this humongous lake that has marine animals in it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that Lake Titicaca is above the fucking tree line. It's so high above sea level. Like trees can't grow there because it's too high in altitude. The only things that'll grow there are like weird, like little hardy grasses and shit. Like you can't grow crops here. This is another thing about Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, like these enormous complexes. Like Butt guys did not build that because they couldn't eat, because they couldn't do agriculture up there. So you can't sustain a large population without having some kind of like what we've got now, like disconnected tech, a civilization that can transport shit, like enough food to feed all your workers. And butt dudes can't do that, right?
Yeah. So according to the Electric Universe guys, like the whole situation on the planet could have been totally different in terms of gravity.
Yeah.
And what's the other thing? Like, I was thinking about those periods where they describe like if the sun turns off and some other
right. Yeah. Like solar regime change is what I call it.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking in terms of like what if our atmospheric pressure was higher, and so it was more hospitable in a higher altitude.
Mm-hmm.
But this doesn't work with why there's a freaking lake there that has marine. It had to have risen up,
or there's a giant tidal wave,
or a giant tidal wave. Yeah, deposited all that stuff in there. But my point was that like maybe whenever that area, what is it? The city that's built there on that Lake Titicaca.
Tiwanaku. Yeah, and Pumapunku.
Yeah. Like maybe it was a thicker atmosphere.
Yeah.
Like something could have happened where a bunch of our atmosphere got blown off.
Yeah.
By the solar wind or whatever. Because like this is the idea about what happened to Mars.
Yes.
Right. If it lost its magnetosphere or whatever, then
right. The solar wind is gonna like shred your atmosphere. Yeah.
So like if that happened here in one of these cataclysms, like it just when the poles flip or something happens with the magnetosphere, and then we lose a bunch of the atmosphere and the pressure goes down.
Right. And then suddenly you're like, everybody starts going downhill because you can't breathe there anymore. Yeah, and all the plants die and it becomes arid as fuck. But it doesn't explain why it looks like an ocean bottom all the way up on those mountains everywhere, right? That there's salts and nitrates and
right,
shit like that.
It had to have been an ocean bottom at some point.
Yeah, and that's why I think that entire area, all of the Andes and everything is uplifted. Because like the other thing that's interesting in Peru, you see this all over the place in Peru, and near Titicaca you could find a bunch of this where there are enormous chunks of like huge pieces of sedimentary like sediments, basically like tons of layers that are completely flipped 90 degrees on their side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that place where they carved the huge door.
Yes.
It's like what they call the...
Yeah, the Puerto de Jayamarca, the Gate of Gods, is cut into this strange formation that is actually
Vertical
sedimentary rocks turned on its side, 90 degrees. There's the other place I was talking about before where it's like this huge wall. It's and it's got dinosaur footprints going down it.
Yeah.
Like this fucking spider dinosaur guy, right? Running
Yeah.
along the wall, but it was just its turn.
Also, remember when we went to Big Bend and we were in Ernst Tenahawk, the little canyon
Yeah.
that goes in there. We're looking at the sediment on the walls, and there's this one place where the whole thing just does this
Yeah.
freaking like puzzle piece curl,
Yeah.
and it was just badass. Like the rock that was, because that was like a kind of a stronger
Right.
area of a rock, so it was sort of jutting out, and it looked like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, it was a
Little linking head, interlocking head, just like curled all the way around, and then went back straight.
Yeah, and there were
like,
there were
what
there were
did
smaller
that?
yeah there were smaller discontinuities all along because like all of the sediments were tilted like to
Yeah.
like 25 30 degrees to ground level, right?
Yeah.
So like as you walked into the canyon, you were actually passing by
Deeper and deeper
You were
and
going
deeper
deeper and
sediments.
deeper in because they were all tilted.
Yeah, that was the first thing that tripped me out. I'm like, we are walking down
Yeah.
underground
Right.
right now in this canyon.
Right.
It's like it's flat, but
Yeah.
it was like walking on a giant staircase
That had fallen over backwards.
that was laying down like flat on the ground.
Yeah. But all the sediments were doing this too. So as we walked in, you're passing them, and like, but I would notice that like they would be going along, and there would be this little dip, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like there would be this little discontinuity, and then we got deep in, and we saw that huge one where it was like, right? But there were little ones,
Yeah.
and you would see it all the way along it, like there was this break or some kind of discontinuity in the sediment. Yeah, I don't know, like.
something crazy.
Like-
Many crazy things happened.
Right. So the only thing that I know of that can cause that kind of thing are like earthquake storms, global earthquake storms, right? Like there's that frozen wave in I can never remember where this is, but I've got a picture of it where basically you can see this enormous plain, right? It's a flat area or whatever, and there's just this weird like hump all along it, and that's an actual land wave. It's composed of dirt, of like the land itself, and it's a wave that was moving through the land during a period of like incredible earthquake. Because like when there's enough earthquakes going on, the land actually liquefies. It just becomes no longer solid, and like it starts to act like a liquid, and then like these huge waves will be passing through it, right? And so once apparently the earthquakes eventually stopped, and this wave was like froze it. And you can still look at it. It looks like a wave in water, but it's on land, and it's huge. It's stuck there now. So like, I think that would be the only thing I could think of that could cause those weird discontinuities in the sediments. That they would have had to have happened before the sediments crystallized. So back when it was still mud. Or
Well, that's
clay.
like the dinosaur footprints are all in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were all running from it.
Right.
Running from the land wave in
Yeah.
mud. It's like, man, that's crazy. In the riverbeds around here, there's dinosaur footprints like all over the place. And
Yeah.
it's just crazy to think about that. Like, okay, you're down in a riverbed here, and so you're in a valley, and all around you are these hills that were still like continuous sedimentary deposits
Right.
in the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
But at one point, all of those deposits conceivably were not there yet.
Yeah.
But the sea had completely dried up enough for dinosaurs to run across the muddy shit.
Yeah. That's why.
It's just insane.
That's why I think that. I mean, if you look at how.
But it was ocean then, because when you go below those dinosaur footprints in the mud, it's more and more and more and more
Yeah.
sediment. You're not
Right.
at the bottom.
Right.
So it's like,
But
it had been an ocean or a sea or whatever for so long, and then it dries up, and then the dinosaurs all run across it.
Yeah, they're like, "Fuck," and then it comes back. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I looked at this and I, like, why do we find trees and mammoths also in this ancient, because the idea here for where we are anyway, they call it a late Cretaceous. It's a late Cretaceous inland sea, right? But there are mammoths in it. There are trees in there that are petrified. Like,
Yeah.
those mammoths are not late Cretaceous.
And like way, way on top of the hills, in some of the highest areas, there are just like entire layers of just crystallized seashells.
Right. And coral with crazy.
We call them the beat because like that's the beach.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the
like,
beach.
That's where you'd be standing and the waves like washing up on your feet. And it's just all these seashells, and now they're just like quartz.
Yeah. Where in the hill country do you live? Near the beach.
With that, we got to take another break.
All right.
Snake break.
That's right. Snakes at the beach.
I won. I successfully entertained everyone.
I won. Snake entertain.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the second hour of Brothers of the Serpent podcast. We are in the Tangent Cube, and we're about to go on some tangents. Yeah! We've been talking about Thunderbolts of the Gods, and craziness in Peru, and weird saltpeter, and boiling your urine to get bombs. But now we're gonna...
or mining poop out of a cave.
That's right.
Back guano.
Mining poop from caves. Guano bowls. I like the whole set.
Welcome.
But so for months I've had this Bermuda Triangle stuff referenced, and like the last time we were going on this topic, I got through a couple of parts of it, and then Kyle got stuck on the whole what was it, the electromagnetic part. There was something that you were like, wait, I want to talk about that. It was what was it?
Yeah, I don't know, but I derailed it.
No, it wasn't a derail. It was it was good because it was a really fascinating thing. The guy was saying that this is associated with, like, the compass problems or whatever was associated with something. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
And you were like, let's talk about that because that's weird. And we did for the rest of the show. So.
Well, I can talk about magnets. That's what I should have done when you were like, hey, just entertain people. Okay, magnets.
Yeah, magnets and pyramids and snakes and
yeah.
and put them together, and what do you get? A pyramid snake something. Okay, so this story is from a pilot, like, that basically survived whatever was going to happen to him in the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, so he tells this. So let's see, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just after takeoff from Andros Island, when Gernon, in company of his father Bruce Gernon Sr. and business associate Gus Lafayette, saw a lenticular or lens-shaped cloud sitting very low over the ocean. They noticed it because it was lower than anything they had seen before, about 500 feet above the surface. Continuing the angle of ascent about 1,000 feet a minute, they noticed that the lenticular cloud was undergoing a metamorphosis into a huge, towering cumulus cloud, which seemed to be rising about as fast as they were. For a few minutes, it engulfed the Bonanza until Gernon climbed atop it and entered clear skies at 11,500 feet altitude. Looking behind him, he noticed that the cloud had built into an enormous squall, or a storm, extending in the shape of a semicircle behind them. Shortly after this, they noticed another cloud building before them. When coming closer, they noticed that the cloud originated from the surface of the ocean, like the cloud they had left behind, but in this case, it extended at about 60,000 feet high. He decided to fly around it, but after several miles, they realized that it curved around them to the east. It was then that they realized that this was the same cloud. Beyond their vision, it had formed into a gigantic donut, or toroid, extending around them. He felt that it must have had a 30-mile diameter, since visibility was about 10 miles that day, and the clouds extended far beyond his view. Gernon admits that he felt as if he were hemmed in. The cloud was too high for his Bonanza to fly over, and it was impossible to descend to get under it. The donut-shaped cloud was continuously constricting around them until eventually became only 4 or 5 miles of interior diameter. Extraordinary bright white flashes burst about inside the cloud, and it grew increasingly darker. So, like, it was getting darker and darker, and then huge lightning flashes. So then Gernon takes up the narrative directly. I noticed a large U-shaped opening in the west side of the donut cloud. I had no choice but to turn and try to exit through this opening.
As we approached, we watched the top ends of the U-gap join, forming a hole. The break in the cloud now formed a perfect horizontal tunnel, 1 mile wide and more than 10 miles long. We could see the clear blue sky on the other side. We also saw that the tunnel was rapidly shrinking. I increased the engine RPM, bringing our speed to the caution area of 230 miles per hour. When we entered the tunnel, its diameter had narrowed to only 200 feet. I was amazed at what the shaft now looked like. It appeared to be only a mile long instead of 10 plus, as I had originally estimated. Light from the afternoon sun shone through the exit hole and made the silky white walls glow. The walls were perfectly round and slowly constricting. All around the edges were small puffs of clouds of a contrasting gray, swirling counterclockwise around the airplane. We were in the tunnel for only 20 seconds before we emerged from the other end. For about 5 seconds, I had the strange feeling of weightlessness and an increased forward momentum. When I looked back, I gasped to see the tunnel walls collapse and form a slit that slowly rotated clockwise. All of our electronic and magnetic navigational instruments were malfunctioning. The compass was slowly spinning even as the airplane flew straight. Instead of the blue sky we expected, everything was a dull, grayish-white haze. Visibility seemed like more than 2 miles, yet we could not see the ocean, the horizon, or the sky. The air was very stable and there was no lightning or rain. I like to refer to this as an electronic fog because it seemed to be what was interfering with our instruments. We were in the electronic fog for 3 minutes when the controller radioed that he had identified an airplane directly over Miami Beach flying due west. I looked at my watch and saw that we had been flying for less than 34 minutes all told. We could not have reached Miami Beach. We should have been approaching the Bimini Islands. There's Bimini again, right? I told the controller that he must have identified another airplane and that we were approximately 90 miles southwest of Miami and still looking for Bimini. Suddenly, the fog started breaking apart in a weird sort of electronic fashion. Long, horizontal lines appeared in the fog on either side of us. The lines widened into slits about 4 or 5 miles long. We saw blue sky through them. The slits continued expanding and joined together. Within 8 seconds, all the slits had joined and the gray fog disappeared entirely. All I could see was brilliant blue sky as my pupils adjusted to the abrupt increase in brightness. Then, I saw the barrier island of Miami Beach directly below. Both fascinated and bewildered by his experience, he began to do some math. He checked his watch. He had been in flight for 47 minutes. Yet the course was 250 miles. There was no way he could have traveled it so fast. I could not logically understand what had happened during the flight, although I felt it was significant and reviewed it in my mind several times a day. He had heard about the Bermuda Triangle in 1972 and about the theories of time warps causing some to disappear. It was then that I realized time was the key. It should have taken about 4 minutes to travel through the tunnel, since it appeared to be between 10 and 15 miles long. Instead, this is precisely how long it took for us to leave the storm and reach clear skies. The remarkable thing is that we did not come out of the storm 90 miles away from Miami as we should have. We had traveled through 100 miles of space and 30 minutes of time in little more than 3 minutes.
Hello?
And that explains like the weird vertigo and like strange momentum shit that he felt right after they left the cloud.
Right, but his clock was still synced with Miami.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but he was like clearly he traveled way too fast for that plane. So yeah, I thought that was it's a really strange story.
Dude, that's crazy. I was watching a cloud the other day.
Did you try to bust it?
Yeah, that's what I was first thinking. That's like he should have tried to bust that cloud.
Yeah, cloud busting keeps you in shape.
This one was like it was just clear blue skies, and the sun was like way up there. And I had this badass camera that I borrowed from Ashley, and I had it set up outside, and I was like taking some photos and stuff, and look up in the sky, and there's this tiny little wispy cloud, right? And it looked freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm gonna get it. I'm just gonna try to
cloak UFO.
But it was all like filaments, like tiny little filaments. But they were all like clustered together, like chaotic spider web or
Cool.
like cloud. Really well defined edges. It wasn't all like blurry or whatever. It was extremely well defined, but you could see blue through it, like because it was all these tiny little lines, and they were just morphing along.
Cool.
And it was pretty big. So, and it wasn't near the sun. Like it was just in this big patch of like perfectly blue sky. So I get the camera set up, and I'm like pointing it at it, and it's just like it's changing so rapidly. It like almost vanishes and then it like comes back into some like it gets bigger and then gets smaller and just. I was just like,
Where's all this
what?
cloud coming from? And where's it going?
I know, it was really cool. That's all I have to say. It was just like I don't know, just seeing it.
Maybe somebody else was busting that cloud.
That must be what happened. Yeah, eventually it just vanished, but it's just weird how they can change their shape so rapidly and grow into all this stuff and then just vanish.
Yeah. Like, I love the time-lapse images of clouds coming over mountains.
Yeah,
You know, there's a mountaintop in the cloud. Like, the cloud, it looks like it's trying to roll over the mountain, but it just stops at the peak, but it's like, and it's just disappearing right there at the edge. And it's like, so clearly, clouds are not simply, you know, like big puffs of vapor. That like something else. There's a bunch of other stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Like, they have to be able to condense out of the air. And
Right.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that, the way this cloud looked with all these little filaments, like those little areas were, you know, like, I don't know if they were trying to figure out if it would be high pressure or low pressure.
Well, I mean, it could be electrical potential too. Like,
Yeah, it could be.
like the filaments makes it seem to me like, you know, it's like a space brain. You know, it's an invisible Boltzmann brain moving through the atmosphere right there. Like, clouds are forming along its filaments of its neural network.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't bust it.
That's right. It actually is the reason you exist. Okay, so there's more of these. Let's see. I have a bunch
All right,
of these.
give me
more.
another one.
Yeah, here we go. This one's blue. I don't know what blue means. The other ones are yellow, so I'll read the blue one. UFOs and USOs are, let's see, that's a unidentified submerged object. USOs are frequently seen in the Bimini area and in other areas of the Bermuda Triangle. Dr. J. Manson Ballantyne, a retired professor of oceanography at the University of Miami, cataloged many of these during his near 50 years of zoological and oceanographic work in the waters of the Triangle. He observed, there are more sightings in this area than in any other place. There have been many sightings of aircraft that we know are not planes and undersea craft that we know are not regular submarines. In collating dozens of UFO/USO reports in the Triangle, Dr. Ballantyne has noted how localized fogs and electromagnetic anomalies seem to go hand in hand with their arrivals and departures. At normal cruising or hovering, however, they appear merely as unidentified objects or glowing lights. The shape of a USO is usually described as more oblong than a saucer. Many times 100 or 200 feet long. This last feature was also noted in the area of water discoloration after Phantom 2 disappeared. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that story, but there was a Phantom 2 disappeared, and they sent, like, almost immediately scrambled jets to go find it because they were doing a test.
Yeah.
I remember that guy saw that. He like described this weird. He was like, I think it's an oil slick, but then he said that one side of it was sticking out of the water. You remember that? Yeah. But they display abilities none of our submarines are capable of. Okay, examples of Ballantyne's data include the following account related to him by Robert Kuhn, a part-time fisherman in Miami. While a few miles off of Bowie Rock, Key Biscayne, in May 1975, he noticed a massive gray-white object beneath his boat that looked like an underwater cloud. Its presence fritzed his depth finder and sonar, and he decided to get out of the area quickly. It's time to GTFO. You see an underwater cloud? GTFO. Another encounter with a similar USO was experienced by fisherman Don Delmonico in April 1973 near Great Isaac Rock, near Bimini again. The object was light gray, about 100 to 200 feet long, and seemed to be smooth without fins, portholes, elevators, superstructure, or any type of propulsion. It raced underneath his 35-foot boat, traveling about 75 miles per hour, like under the water. In assessing such cases, Dr. Ballantyne has offered that these may not be objects at all, but magnetic fields forming underwater, intense enough to create cloud-like formations caused by the actual object materializing or disturbing the magnetic field before it does materialize. Okay. An encounter at Bimini by two members of the oceanographic crew of the New Freedom, is, however, an unimpeachable account of a UFO at hovering or normal cruising. This was seen during a stroll along the beach after dinner on a very starlit night, August 2nd, 1975. Dr. Jim Thorne, the expedition leader and chief eyewitness, made the following report to Dr. Ballantyne. Excuse me. A single star seemed to detach itself from the others and come towards us. It hovered directly above us and then moved to the right.
It maneuvered first to the right and then to the left and back again. It appeared to stop dead in the sky and hover over different parts of the island and sea around it. I would calculate its speed at several thousand miles per hour. It seemed to be a bluish white and also to vibrate. At times, we thought we heard a buzzing sound, or rather, a steady oscillation of sound. We observed it for a full 3.5 minutes. It was close enough for us to see its shape. When it got close, I saw that it was lighted with blue-white lights, and then it started away very fast, like it took off. Okay, so let's see. The experience of two boaters, Paul Vance and Doug Vernon, on June 25th, 2001, happened while cruising the Bahamas from West Palm Beach, Florida, on Vance's 26-foot sailboat, Rare Form. Vance, a commercial pilot, is particularly qualified to identify size, distance, and speed of anything in the atmosphere. He reported what he saw in a pilot's cool and spontaneous repertorial style. 11 miles offshore, I looked up into the sky to the northeast and witnessed something strange. There was a single light, I'm guessing about 3,000 to 5,000 feet in altitude, which I assumed to be an aircraft with its landing light on, although not very brilliant. The light then appeared to turn downward, which made me think that it may be a helicopter with a searchlight, although again it wasn't a brilliant light. A swirling mist then engulfed the light. As the light slowly drifted down into the mist, the whole mass of mist then glowed a short time and then dissipated along with the light. Stars could then be seen, and the sky was clear. This happened at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and my friend witnessed it too and tried to videotape it, but the boat was pitching too much to get anything.
Okay, so I'm thinking about all of this stuff in terms of this, like, electric universe idea.
Yeah.
And isn't there another place that's like the Bermuda Triangle? Like
Yeah, the Devil's Triangle over by Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if there is like something going on there, like in terms of these filaments, according to the electric universe idea, like these massive filaments that roll or that go through galaxies and stuff, and I'm trying to figure out how to. There's 2 points, or these 2 points on the Earth are like sort of like the places where like one specific filament or like the center of the filament is actually going through the Earth and then like maybe coming out in another way, or it's like, you see what I'm saying?
Those are the contact point, like, because if
yeah. Okay, so that's why, like, during certain times, I guess, and it would have to do with disturbances going on out in the cosmos, even that just instruments and magnetic shit and like those bowls in the water that you were talking about, and just like all kinds of weird shit happens. Because they were talking about how the electric force is actually, has to do with gravity and everything. Like the density of materials and all of this stuff has to do with the electric force. So there's something going on there, and it just fluctuates at these points all the time. Like they're regular or stable in the sense that as long as we've known in modern times, like that's been like the connection points or something.
Well, I was just thinking, because when you said that, I was like, okay, because like if you think of the way they talk about planet formation, these filaments are moving through a gas cloud, and they're
creating points,
right. So like the filament that created Earth would have had a contact point.
Yeah.
Right? So what if they're the original contact points from the creation of Earth, from the original filament? So like, so anytime there's a weird electrical phenomena, they tend to go where the filament passed through the planet.
Yes. Oh, dude.
Yeah.
That's freaking badass.
Solved. Next.
Next mystery. All right. No. Read some more stories. Maybe we'll get some more confirmation here.
This is cool because it goes to Columbus's stuff. So at the opposite end of the spectrum is Columbus, in the early hours of another October 11th, long ago. He is without doubt the first person to record unusual unusual phenomenon, a strange light associated with those seas we today call the Bermuda Triangle. His logbook speaks in an impressive way over the vault of time along similar lines with affidavits of more recent explorers and sailors. During his first voyage to the New World, no less than 5 times he recorded unexplained phenomena, thrice involving the compass, once involving the sea, and once involving an unexplained faint light rising up and hovering in the distance. Although his log was eventually lost to posterity, much of its annotations and entries were preserved by Fray Bartolomeu de las Casas in his diario. Okay. Thursday, 13th September 1492. On this day, at the beginning of night, the compasses northwested. and in the morning they northeasted somewhat. Monday, September 17th. The pilots took the North Star, marking it. They found that the compass is northwest at a full point, or 11 1/4 degrees, and the sailors were fearful and melancholy and did not say why. The Admiral, Columbus, was aware of this, and he ordered that the north be marked again when dawn came, and they found that the compasses were then correct. The cause was because the North Star appears to move, and not the compasses. Trying to keep mutiny from happening, right? It's not the compasses, guys. The North Star's moving. Sunday, and they're all like, all right, that's fine. Sunday, 23rd of September. Because the sea had been calm and smooth, the men complained, saying that since in that region there were no rough seas, the Sargasso Sea, it would never blow for a return to Spain. But later the seas rose high and without wind, which astonished them. So like there was no wind, but all of a sudden the sea's like going crazy. Sunday, 30th of September. The Admiral says here, when night comes, the compass is northwest 1/4, and when dawn comes, they align with the North Star exactly. I wonder if that was on his maps. He had ancient maps, right? The maps were telling him like, yeah, right here, your compass is going to be weird, you know?
Huh.
The unexplained light rising and then hovering in the west is perhaps the most how do you say that word? Propitious? Yeah, phenomenon recorded in the triangle. It happened on the eve of discovering the New World, and it inspired Columbus and his crew to sail on and discover the Bahamas. Columbus saw it first, and then Pedro Gutierrez. Then, quote, after the Admiral said it, it was seen once or twice, and it was as a small wax candle that arose and lifted up. What both arose and lifted up, those are two different Spanish words, like alcaba, and then lifted up is levata, or levatava, yeah. What this is
Levatava?
Yeah, levatava. Levatava, levitated. It's hard to say. Whether it means rose up, hovered, and then disappeared upward, or merely vanished while levitating is unclear. Today it is hard for landfall specialists to explain it, since Columbus was too far at sea to have seen any bonfire or torch on land, and local island fishermen would not have been so far at sea at night with torches to attract catch. Scholarly debate has subsequently offered to explain the erratic compass readings by the apparent revolution of Polaris around the celestial pole. An optical effect for an observer, although this is only visual and not something mechanical that comes and goes. Aside from this, it has also been suggested that the dusk and dawn readings varied because during the evening readings, a crewman unwittingly placed the compass too near a bucket of nails or a sword or some other metal object, which then deflected it. Skirp-derping everything. Whatever the cause, Columbus may be pardoned for his necessarily expeditious explanations for these encounters, knowing how a crew can panic when faced with the unexplained. Whether Columbus believed his story or not, or whether he was simply trying to keep his crew calm and protect his venture and life, is another conjecture altogether. It was easier to say Polaris moved than to admit their equipment was ceasing to work. That, in essence, the rules that had always governed navigation and seamanship had ceased to operate in a normal, predictable way. Like, it's crazy to me that, like, they would be less afraid of the fucking star moving than of their compass not working right.
Yeah.
If I thought the Polaris was moving, I'd be like, what the fuck? Right? A similar motive may be responsible, though innocently, for our own tidy explanations for the unexplained events so often reported in the Bermuda Triangle. Perhaps it is easier to blame our equipment or ourselves when we find ourselves on unfamiliar ground than it is to admit there may be something beyond our own present knowledge or control. That's interesting. Okay, so let's see. I highlighted this part. The evidence that believers in the triangle present for their theories is often very impressive, many times more impressive, and sometimes embarrassingly more impressive than dry facts accumulated by the limitations of an official inquiry. The disappearance of planes while coming in for a landing, radio calls from planes long vanished and long out of fuel, reports of weird objects harassing planes, plus the pattern of electromagnetic disturbances reported by many who survived unusual events, form a springboard into a pool of fascinating and disturbing conjectures. Scientists and researchers into geophysical data, and those involved in the search for new forms of energy, plus many pertinacious observers in situ in the Bermuda Triangle, have compiled data individually that, when placed together in a broader perspective, may provide a startling solution to some of the mystery. So, that reminds me of, think of like the Hutchison effect. Remember that?
Yeah.
Like the way that he could, that thing was like taking apart materials.
Yeah.
You know, and you think of like how some of these planes or ships just seem to just disintegrate like out of nowhere. Like if
he was using extremely high frequency, high voltage current, and then oscillating it with like radio waves or something.
Yeah, he had like rotating or like fluctuating magnetic fields, right? And he had then he had, like basically using high current, and then he would like had this wand that was basically a radio transmitter, and he would sit there and adjust the frequency of it and kind of wave it around towards the area where the fields were intersecting, and he would just put stuff there. Like you look at the videos, it's like there's a weird like puppy doll or whatever, and then there's like a block of metal.
Yeah, they were all these different materials.
Yeah, and like they start moving around, and then the block of metal is like. It's like the one where he made ice cream drip to the ceiling. That was wild.
Yeah. Man, yeah, you got to check that.
And the
stuff out.
cannonball, that 60-pound cannonball he had back there, and it's like it's sitting there, and you start to see it turn, and then it goes.
Listen up.
The
like,
craziest stuff is when he like puts two dissimilar metals next to each other. Like I think one was like a butter knife, and he had it sitting on some like steel bar or something, and he's waving the wand around, and the knife just kind of is shifting a little bit, and the bar is shifting underneath it, and then the knife just kind of like melts into it real quick.
Yeah, it just disappears into it. You're like, what? And then later he cut it so that you could see the knife embedded in that material.
That's crazy.
Like he cut it, and there was another one. Like he did that with he would embed wood, and like he would embed these dissimilar materials, like pieces of wood embedded in metal, with no.
Stick to the plan.
It's wild.
So, God, dude, I need to watch that stuff again now that I've been like looking into the Electric Universe shit.
Yes.
Because, dude, like that is, I don't know, man.
Especially when you look at the ones where he's got a metal bar of something, whether it's aluminum or steel or whatever, and he's he's got it in the flex or whatever, and then like you're looking at a picture of it later where he's just left it in this flex state, and you see all these fucking square. Yeah, it looks like spaghetti strands. The metal like separated, and they're all very uniform and shit. They're perfectly square, but they're long spaghetti strands of metal or whatever. And like, they look like they were splitting off and shit.
Yeah, he's just like peeling the thing apart. It's just
but the shapes that it took, like when it's breaking or whatever, it's like that tells you something about what's happening, right? These long, like these square tubes or whatever it was making. I don't know. That shit's wild. Hutchison, poor guy.
What was the deal with him? Like he got a bunch of Tesla's equipment, and then they took it from him.
He was a huge fan or believer of Tesla or whatever, and like he basically went and got his electrical engineering degree and was like all about Tesla, and he built a big lab, and he started to get almost immediate results, and like he got raided like 3 times with the government. They took all of his fucking shit, and then like he was trying to get it back, and like they didn't have any reason to have it. And he had no lab or whatever, and eventually they were like, "Oh yeah, sorry," and he just like gave it all back. It was destroyed and all fucked up and shit. So he basically lost his lab, but he knew people in the Navy, and like he started to get this Navy surplus stuff. Like that's why he had the radio. Like you look at his apartment, he just had these enormous like old school, big freaking dials, and switches and shit, like old school Navy equipment for all different kinds of stuff, and he would just use it, and he'd just play with them in his apartment. And like that was how he originally found the Hutchison effect. He talked about it, about how he was like sitting there like adjusting one of the dials and something hit him in the back of the head. And then his like crystal batteries were cool too.
Yeah.
Like
he would go collect all these little pieces of crystal and stuff, and then he would make a
slurry. Yeah.
Mix it together in some type of something that would harden.
Yeah.
And he'd put them down in these tubes, and they would just be. I think he was using the piezoelectric.
Yeah, well, the idea, like I remember what he said was like, so he would pack this like still wet or still like
plaster or something.
Yeah, it was still malleable at the time. He would pack it into this cylinder, right? And you put electrodes in there, and he close it off like a battery, and then he would apply current while it was still malleable. Okay, so that would flex all the crystals, and then the shit would harden in their flex position, and then he would let the current off, and then they would be trying to unflex or whatever, and that they would be making current. Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Yeah, it was genius.
I'm gonna have to try that.
5 volts forever. He had that one that was like running the little fan, and he'd been going for years. He's like, he had a little voltage meter on it. It was like noticing a couple of volts. He'd been doing it for fucking years with no.
Yeah, I wonder why we don't utilize the piezoelectric effect more. Like I don't know. Seems like a really easy way to get power.
Yeah, well, I mean, like he said that his whatever the stuff was that he was using for glue, he was like, this is a formula that he came up with because it has to be really rigid.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to hold all those little crystals in their flex state, which is not easy. Like for most glues, like they'll hold stuff together, but they're not going to hold individual things in like stressed states. So like it was a really strong, it was like King Kong glue or whatever. But yeah, the Hutchison effect is a very fascinating thing. And like I've always connected it to the Bermuda Triangle, other strange things like that. I mean, I wonder if it has something to do with some of the disappearances too, the 411 stuff. Like, I mean, if these shifting fields can like, disintegrate metals and stuff, like why not a person? You just walk in, just turn into like a tooth and a couple of bones.
It's paradoxical undressing, guys.
It's paradoxical disintegration. That doesn't explain why the clothes are found all folded nicely.
Yeah.
Electromagnetic effect is not to like unzip your pants and come off very nicely.
No, but that's still like that. All of that stuff. Looking at it through the lens of the electric universe is like really fascinating.
God, so you become one of those electric universe, like everything you mentioned. Oh yeah, the electric universe. Oh, shut up.
Yeah, well, that's what I do when I rabbit hole something. So.
Yeah, I know.
I'm still trying to figure it out too. Like there's a lot of shit that I don't get about it. But.
So let's see. Let's say this one's talking about the Devil's Sea, I think. Let's see. So the so-called Devil's Sea also shares another interesting coincidence with the Bermuda Triangle. It is located on the exact opposite side of the Earth, which is the antipode, right? And between the same latitudes of 20 to 30 degrees north. But while this similarity is of apparent interest, it is not half as piquing as its dissimilarities. These include the lack of treacherous currents over the shallow banks of the Bahamas and the lack of strong Gulf Stream currents. Factors for which disappearances are so mundanely blamed in the Triangle are completely absent off of Japan. Nevertheless, disappearances are not only frequent in the Devil's Sea, but some have been singularly spectacular. The most recent cases have, and this is recent for when he wrote this book, which is in like the early 2000s. The most recent cases have included the Japanese fishing vessel Dario Mario No. 3, which disappeared with 15 crew on February 14th, 1992. The large freighter Vast Ocean last reported itself off the Japanese island of Kyushu almost exactly 1 year later, on February 15th, 1993, and was never heard from thereafter. On November 21st, 1995, the Akashem last reported herself approaching this area en route from Onahama, Japan, and disappeared without a trace. The Yuko Maru No. 8, carrying 25 tons of fish, was found derelict off Japan on January 7th, 1992, smoldering between her deckhouse and stern. No trace of any of her crew was found, nor exactly how they left the ship. Most recently, the 23,000-ton Honghae Sanyo, with 28 crew on April 11th, 2001, sent off a mayday similar in some respects to those in the Bermuda Triangle, saying that a strong wind had suddenly hit it. It was southeast of Japan at the time. No further messages were received. When a search was mounted, only her empty lifeboats were found. Later, one body was located and patches of oil were sighted rising up from beneath the sea. There is nothing readily available to blame since tumultuous seas are absent. Piracy is often rampant in the Orient, though usually closer to China, in the South China Sea, the Straits of Malacca, and off the Malay Peninsula. Let's see. Considering the many dissimilarities between these areas, several independent researchers have used a process of elimination to uncover any underlying thread. A process that has led them all to one common denominator: strong geomagnetic lines. This coincidence raises the question about the potential of this force field. Magnetic field readouts are the oldest scrutinized geophysical data available. Their strength, vagaries, and anomalies have been studied for the past century and a half. Nevertheless, repeat readings and tests continue to offer puzzling and conflicting results, leaving us with an unstable foundation for even interpreting its potential. Our inability to even crack the shell of its origin still elicits qualified opinions similar to those expressed by Dr. Jane Manson Valentine. Quote, "To begin with, that happens to be the only inanimate phenomenon for which we have been unable to conceive a mechanistic analog. We can visualize electrons traveling along a conductor and thus explain electric current, or we can envisage energy waves of different frequencies in the ether and thus explain the heat-light ratio spectrum. But a magnetic field
defies a mechanical interpretation. There is something almost mystical about it. That's cool.
That's cool.
I know sexism when I see sex.
Yeah.
Magnets. That's what it's all about, folks.
That's right.
And we got to take a break.
All right.
I think they should change the name
To what?
to the Bermuda Snake.
The Bermuda Magnet.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Final segment of the final hour.
Yes.
And we're tangenting again.
Anything again. I got this one last thing I want to read from this book, Weird Triangle book. This is a great, fantastic quote, and I think we could probably riff off of this for the rest of the show.
All right, so
Just say it. Or we can just talk about snakes and pyramids. Okay. So, it is within the realm of scientific possibility that there could be two worlds coexistent, occupying the same part of space at the same moment of time, each world just as real as the other, with its mountains and valleys and rivers and trees and people, and that each world could pass freely through the other world without being conscious of the existence of the other world if you grant just one thing: atomic forces within the material substances of these two worlds, which are not mutually interactive.
We're just looking around.
So, dark matter.
Wimps. No, I think what it's saying is like you could, because, you know, matter is mostly nothing,
Right, empty space, yeah.
or like large areas of like interconnected fields, really,
Yeah.
you know, right? That if you had a similar set of fields that did not interact with the original set of fields, that you could have an entire other material universe that was like coexistent in the same places
yeah.
as this material universe, and you would never, and you know, but every once in a while something weird would happen, and there would be a short, zzz, you know, and like stuff would cross over.
Yeah.
So there's like a dark Earth. And sometimes people go to the dark Earth. I don't know, but it's like that whole idea. It could be dark. I mean, you could say dark matter, like the excess gravity is being caused, right?
Yeah.
Gravity is
As a property of matter.
well, I mean, yeah. Like I always thought that the fact that gravity seems to kind of bend light, and it gave gravity primacy over light, right? So if gravity has primacy over light and time, I mean, it seems to flex everything. Then you could say that it's sort of beyond. That it's more fundamental than everything else, and so then, yeah, if there was another universe coexisting alongside of ours, just out of phase with us, or using forces that ours doesn't, so that they can coexist, then the gravity of that universe would be affecting ours because it's it's fundamental, it's below all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't really.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter, though, but, like, the idea that you could have, like, matter made up of a bunch of particles that don't interact with
Yeah.
the ones we're used to.
Or that are held
at
together
all.
with forces that just completely don't interact with the forces that holds our stuff together.
Yeah. And they don't interact with any of our stuff at all, so we can both coexist in the same place
Yeah.
at the same time and never.
Right. And it's interesting how many ancient legends kind of hint at that, like the whole Celtic, you know, otherworld. You know, you had the manifest realm and the other world, and they would show it with the knot. That everything is, you know, the warp and the woof, right? That they're supporting each other, but that they don't ever become each other.
Right.
And so, what's supporting? What is doing the supporting? If they're built of forces or materials that completely don't interact, then there must be some common force for them to mesh, right?
Yeah. What was that you were talking about the other night when you came down here?
Yeah, that
We were
was.
hanging out. We were talking about that, the weave that you were putting it, you were catching it in a way.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
With with the whole thing we had talked about before, where like these indefinable numbers, like
like pi and phi, they're not actually definable in our universe because they just fucking go on forever. So
Right.
like we can continue, like, you know, there are supercomputers that are still calculating pi right now, and they have them to the billions of digits.
Right.
But they'll never get it. You can never sit down and be like, this is pi. It can't ever actually be defined, which to me implies that it doesn't come from here. Like, if it can't be defined here by the rules here, then it can't have its origin here. And yet pi describes most of the shapes in our universe, all the circles, all the spheres, right? Pi is in all of those shapes. And it's fundamental to those shapes, and yet it can't fucking be defined.
But okay, so
I was going off with that, like that implies to me that there is some other source for those actual numbers, because the phi and pi are both like this, and they can't be defined. So that to me implies that something else that isn't part of our universe is supplying these defining
right,
properties.
and the way you were describing it with the knot was that like this one thread of the knot
Sorry,
has
what?
to go down to go underneath one of the other threads.
Right.
Then it comes back up and goes over another one, but they never actually touch.
Right.
And so like that, the way you were describing it was that those numbers or those things like that show up that we can't really define is like that's the bend in our
Right.
thread.
That's right.
And so we know something else is there
Yes.
because we have this weird bend in our thread that can't be.
Right. And the bend in our thread is defined by something that is like 90 degrees
Yeah.
out of phase with ours, and thus can't ever totally be enumerated here, right?
Yeah.
And probably the other universe has similar properties, fundamental properties that are defined by our universe. Which, if we were looking at, if we knew what they were, we could be like, oh yeah, that's 6.5, right? But they can't. Over there, they can't define it. It's an endless, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, okay, one of the problems I have with that idea, though, is that supposedly there are no perfect circles in our universe, right? So, the
Right.
perfect circle is also a concept that we can't really define. Like, we don't.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's not manifest here.
Right. It's manifest over time.
What do you mean?
Like okay, so an orbit is an ellipse, right? But that ellipse also rotates, and so if you like let all that move through time, you eventually get a circle. Because the ellipse like fluctuates and pulses
Right.
and everything like that. And if you let all that shit play out, it'll be a circle.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like across time plus all that shit, like yeah, but no like singular or more. What would you call it? Like not
Yeah,
simple.
because you can't say an orbit is a circle or even ellipse. An orbit is like a projection
Yeah.
of what's going to happen in the future and what happened in the past.
Right.
So,
And it's a spiral too, because you're moving in other directions. So it's
Right.
all relative. But yeah, if you take the orbit of Earth, which sort of has an ellipse, but that ellipse changes in. What would you call it? Ellipsoidity? Yeah, obliquity. The obliquity of the ellipse
Obliquity.
changes, so it becomes more elliptical and then less elliptical, right? But that also so when you have a long axis of that ellipse, it's also rotating,
right.
right? And you let all that sort of play out over a long period of time, but ignore the rest of the solar system. You'll get a circle eventually. Like those old, what were those things?
Spirographs?
Yeah, spirographs. This doesn't look like a circle, but it will be eventually. If you keep going.
So that's kind of like a weird thing about mathematics to me too, is that like.
But
you
phi
can-
is everywhere. You got to admit that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that's really weird. that That's everywhere, but you can't.
Right. It's fun. It's clearly
So,
fundamental.
This is kind of ties into what I was going to ask you. It was like the situation with mathematics where we can actually use mathematics to describe or define some situation or something,
Yeah.
but it doesn't actually explain it at all.
Right.
Like, but you know that it works or something.
Yeah. Like you can use math to describe a square, but it doesn't explain the square, right? You can be like, well, it's this long, and it's got this long here, and it's got these angles in it, or whatever. But that doesn't really explain. It doesn't really define a square to you. But you can use those things to sort of image it, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
That's how I think of math. It's like
Like it's a way to like very precisely image things. You know what I mean? Because math basically is defining vectors and lines and shapes. That's really what it's doing.
But then there's like other, like, you know, these crazy freaking equations that define the universe.
Oh,
Right? They're like, they have this equation. You know, they make a T-shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like this is the universe, and it's like this weird equation, right?
Yeah.
And it has all these.
like the string theory stuff.
Yeah, and that, I was listening to that guy Sean Carroll, and he's talking about like, you know, he'll do these presentations or whatever, and he'll put up this mathematical equation. He'll be like, okay, basically this is the universe. It's the whole thing. It's like everything we know about it. It's all in this one equation. And you can get the T-shirt if you want. You go online and get it. But it's like all these symbols that represent
Variables or constants or whatever.
yeah, and like things that scientists have figured out
Yeah.
about the universe or something. Or mathematicians, like they can sit around and just fuck with symbols and discover shit.
Well, yeah. Okay. So if you have a symbol that represents some known property or force or whatever,
Right.
and then you have other symbols that represent, then you can kind of play with those and discover new things like that. But
Yeah.
you're already working with sort of known. You can't just like sit down with a bunch of weird symbols.
Yeah, I know that.
I mean, you could.
Well, I
That
mean,
would be called magic,
That's
though.
like basically like what Einstein did. Is that he has these symbols or these ideas, you know,
Oh yeah.
energy,
Yeah.
light, or the speed of light
Yeah.
squared.
The cosmological
Like-
constant.
Like that's another thing, like squaring the speed of light.
Yeah.
Like
you
wait a
can't,
minute.
because light's the fastest you can go. It's the fastest.
No, but I don't.
How do you square the fastest thing?
Like thinking about trying to square a speed
Yeah.
is weird because it's something moving through
It's a
space
velocity.
at a velocity,
Yeah.
and then you square it.
Multiply that
Like-
velocity times its velocity, and you're.
But
what do you
there's
do? What do you
this is
do?
what I'm saying. Like it's
But that's when you have to start thinking of units, right? Because you can cancel that shit out, right? If you have something times something or whatever, then the units will just merge. When you're multiplying two things of the same unit together,
Yeah.
the units merge. But
Yeah.
if you have them opposing each other on like fractions, you can cancel them out, and you know.
right. But that's what I'm saying. When you square the speed, that's distance over time.
Yeah.
So you've got these two different things, distance over time, and then you square that.
Right. But you take the distance over time and make it into velocity, I guess. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. If you separate it into d over t, which you can.
It's just weird to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't, you know, I don't know much about that, but I started thinking about that, like squaring the speed of light, and then that's basically like a multiplication. You're multiplying it times itself.
Yeah.
And then I realized that multiplication is actually fucking with dimensions.
Yeah.
Because anytime you multiply, you know, it's telling you something about
Yeah.
the dimension of something. So,
Right.
Like with a square.
Yeah. When you square a square, you get a cube.
Right. Exactly.
That's how we got this cube.
When you square a line, you get a square.
Right. That's right.
It's just so it's like adding dimension to it. So then you take the velocity of something, its distance over time, and then you square it. It like
Right. Do you get area? Like
I don't know.
you get
You get another dimension of
yeah
velocity.
distance over time this way. And this yeah. So it's like you're
I sound like a retard. To
so
mathematicians
so instead
out
of
there.
like going in a straight line, you're defining a plane, right? A flat
yeah,
square.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't get it. That's what I'm saying.
That's why I'm like, you stop thinking of it as d over t and simplify that to v, velocity. Right?
Yeah, it's hard for me to get for some reason. Like I'm just trying to figure out what are we actually doing here? Why is the velocity of light squared in the equation?
Because I think it's because it's an energy representative. Like, you know, you take the velocity of light as being the constant, because it is the constant in that equation, equals mc squared.
Right.
You need a constant to be able to anchor everything else so that you can move everything around. Right? So if you have the velocity of light, and you want to be able to solve for all this, well, he basically figured out that, like, if that's the constant, then you can get the energy, you know, but it's going to be double the fucking the constant, or squared, or whatever.
Yeah. I guess for me, I'm thinking like if I were to actually just try to solve that one, velocity of light squared, what do I get? Just square it. Tell me what I get.
You get c squared. It's like that's what I'm saying. Like c squared is what you get.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not telling me anything.
No, it isn't. But when you multiply it by mass, then it tells you something. That's what E equals mc squared claims anyway.
Right. That's what I guess that's what I'm getting at.
But it works for specific things. So if I took this pack of smokes, right, and I have its mass, like its velocity will define its mass, because like that's basically what that equation is claiming. This is why the idea in all these science fiction stories, as you accelerate and you approach c, you actually get more massive. Okay. So like these massless particles that are constant, like that move at c by nature, they have to have no mass, because
otherwise they'd
have infinite mass.
Yeah.
Right. They'd have all the mass. So like they must be massless, but they can't really be massless, right? Unless they're waves. But they're not. They're particles, right? So it's like it gets confusing. But like if you have something that actually has mass, like any of our stuff, and we built a spaceship right now. We got in it. We started accelerating, and we had a really badass drive, and we started to approach actual light speed. We could continue to accelerate forever, but the acceleration would cease to actually increase velocity, but would instead add mass.
And that's what they think they're doing with like the Hadron Collider or whatever. They keep speeding this thing up, and it gets
right. It doesn't get faster. Yeah, because they're actually using protons, which are massy particles. They're heavy nuclear. They're nuclear particles. So they're atomic nuclear particles. Subatomic, they're part of the nucleus. So they're really fucking big and fat and heavy relative to electrons and shit.
Yeah.
So they have mass. I mean, it's a minuscule amount per particle, but then they fucking accelerate them for months using these incredibly badass supermagnets. Right? But they start out way in the before they get to the Hadron Collider, they had this small one that they built, decades ago.
Yeah.
And they accelerate with that for a couple of weeks. And then it shunts over to the next biggest one, and then that one accelerates it for a long time, and then it shunts to the next one or whatever, and then it finally gets to the LHC, and then it runs that for like 3 months. And it just pours energy through the magnets into these protons for months and months and months, like technically accelerating them, but they don't go faster. They're going 99.99999% of light, of the speed of light. They just get heavier and heavier and heavier, thus representing more and more energy.
How are they detecting how heavy they are? Like, how do they know that it's getting heavier, that it's getting more massive?
But, well, they know because of the energy they're pouring into it, basically.
Okay.
But then they know when they start to make the collisions happen. Or if they have to let the beam go, because then it crushes everything, that long, beam, the beam loss tunnel that has all those fucking baffles to stop it, because it smashes all that shit. Like, it's a beam of protons. But it just smashed all that fucking shit.
Yeah.
So that, but they measured an electron volts. I remember when the LHC was first, and they were talking about like whatever it was, like the enormous number of electron volts. And people were like, oh my god, like they were looking at the number, like flipping out about the extremely high voltage. But it's like those are electron volts, though. Electron volts are like, 10 times negative 1 point whatever to the like 100,000 whatever. It's a tiny voltage, but they are ramping it up to to levels that they think are like some fraction of a second after the Big Bang. That's what they're trying to get to. Like the more energy they can pack into those protons, the closer they get to, and they can't ever actually, just like light, you can't get there, right? Because the energy level becomes infinite as you get to the singularity.
So what if all these little blips that they detect after they smash these things together, and they're like naming them?
Yeah.
And all these they're like, oh, these are the building blocks. What if they're actually smashing that thing into the other world?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they are.
the other, some tiny little particle in the other world is just like,
yeah, some guy in the other world's like, ow,
and we detect it, and they start naming all these things as though they're building blocks of this.
Yeah.
Freaking.
Yeah. What is it like? Like trying to figure out how the universe works using particle collisions. It's sort of like trying to figure out how watches work by smashing them together and then looking at all the pieces on the ground. Just like, what is this watch?
and they like look at all the pieces and. Well, that we'll call that one a sprocket, and that one's a thingamajigger, and that one's a cork.
Yeah, that's just crazy shit. Like, it just, I don't know. That kind of mathematics, like the shit Einstein was doing, it just doesn't.
Did I tell you?
Doesn't make any sense.
Did I tell you that the science fiction story that I read about the people who got into the ship that couldn't stop accelerating?
Yeah, and they were passing through galaxies, and it was like
Yeah, because even though constant acceleration doesn't actually add velocity, because it adds mass, and if you mess with the equation or whatever, and you like think about relativity, then you see that like as you continue to add energy, that like anybody that's actually on the ship or whatever that's accelerating, it seems to them, because of the time dilation, that there is acceleration, right? So as you add energy, like the ship itself, like if you were like a separate observer, and this ship had been accelerating for millions of years, it would still be going almost light speed, right?
Yeah.
But if you were on the ship, all that energy constantly being packed in because it would
continue to look like you're
the time
faster,
dilation.
faster.
Yeah, the time dilation would make it appear to anybody traveling on the ship that it was actually going incredibly fast, like way beyond the speed of light. So it eventually gets to a point to where they're passing through galaxies and they can hear it. The whole of the ship goes boom, and it rings because they just ran through a galaxy, right? But that's because the time dilation for them is so massive at that point that, you know, their time sense is like slowed way down, I guess is what you would say.
Yeah.
Like, but if you were, like an observer, it would just be moving normally. But it would
like a beam of light, anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be this enormous. Like they were talking about it, and they were like, oh, because they knew that they were this massive energy front.
Yeah.
That every time they passed through a galaxy, they were punching a hole through it too, and like just destroying anything in their path, like whatever star, black hole, didn't matter. They just couldn't. They were unstoppable, and they couldn't stop. They couldn't stop accelerating because if they turned off the engines, they would be hit by all the radiation that was being caused by their massive acceleration. They would all die. So they had to keep going. They had to keep the engines on.
Those assholes.
Yeah.
All they cared about was themselves, and they're just destroying entire galaxies.
Initially, they kept aiming for deeper and deeper space because they were like, if we can get out into like interstellar space, then we can maybe shut them down. But they got out into interstellar space, and it was not enough. So they were like, well, maybe if we get into intergalactic space, right? So they get out into intergalactic space, and still too much. By that point, they had accelerated so much that there was still too much radiation flux, so they couldn't stop. But they ended up doing, the time dilation became so great that they were able to like in real time view like formation of things. Like, you know, when they looked out, they would just see galaxies changing and shit moving or whatever because
that's badass.
Like billions of years were passing every second for them. And they ended up going all the way to the Big Crunch. Like, this is before they knew. I guess the story was written before the heat death theory became popular. It was the idea of the Big Crunch. The Big Bang explodes, and it like eventually everything slows down and then comes back together.
Yeah.
Like all the Big Crunch. So they surfed around the universe until everything started to coalesce back together, and it crunches back down into that tiny singularity, and they're like orbiting it, going like hauling ass and shit, and then it explodes, and they're like, holy fuck! And they surf the waves out and shit, and then they manage to slow down and they colonize the planet in the next universe.
That's crazy.
Trillions.
Sounds like a great science
trillions and
fiction
trillions of years later. Yeah, they're like, finally. Well,
now we have to be farmers.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Maybe this is where we came from before. It's like, this is the answer for where life came from in this universe. Because we came from the last universe. By accident. Because we couldn't stop. But yeah, it's like, I think that like in the future, if like things like Electric Universe or maybe elastic stuff or whatever, you know, if or just any kind of different standard model, like we'll look back on the concepts that came about just because of the weirdness of the standard model. You know, like, wait. So you could keep accelerating but not actually accelerate, and you would just get really fucking heavy. But if you were in it, you thought you were going really fast, but you really weren't. And
that's what I'm saying, dude. The whole model, like starting with Einstein's theory of relativity, just like screws everything up. It seems to me.
Yeah.
Like gets so freaking outrageous and weird.
Yeah.
I do
And
agree.
then, and then those people, those scientists are like, yeah, these crackpot theories, like on ancient aliens.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. You're the one that tells us that you can accelerate forever and not actually get anywhere, but you get really fucking heavy, but you don't go faster. But if you're inside of it, you think you're going faster, but you're not. Like, that's normal. I mean, but those guys on ancient aliens, woo, they're crazy. Yeah, I know. I agree. I think it's I mean, like, just think of the models of all the objects out there in the universe. Like, if all this stuff about gravity and everything is all wrong, the redshift and everything, then like black holes they don't exist. Neutron stars, quasars. I mean, the objects themselves are still there, but they're not what we've been told they are.
All the properties of them are.
Yeah, they're just yeah.
Yeah, that one. It's really that one thing, the redshift.
Yeah.
That we were talking about last time is just that's huge, and it's like accepted, done.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's only this one guy.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, it's weird too because they're like, well, there's the Doppler redshift, and then there's the redshift, right? From the expanding of the universe itself.
Yeah.
So they're like, there's the Doppler because the thing is moving away from us. There's that redshift. But then there's also the redshift because the thing is far away from us, and there's like new space appearing in between us, and that's causing a redshift of a different kind. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, how do you know any of that?
Yeah. I don't know, man.
But people are like, we know more about outer space than we do about our own oceans. I'm like, no, we don't. We don't know shit about outer space. All we can do is look at the lights in the sky.
Yeah.
And like guess. We're still guessing, just like the ancients were. Like they're looking up there going, fucking is all that shit. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're doing now. We have a lot more, maybe, we have a lot more tools and ways to look at different spectrums.
Yeah, we've definitely expanded our ability to see.
Yeah. I love the laser, the earthbound telescopes that have the laser corrected atmospheric shit. That's badass. I heard when I read about that, I was like, that's fucking genius.
Wait, what's the deal with that?
Like so now these enormous telescopes, whether they're usually they have to, I guess these are going to be optical, but the enormous telescopes, you got these gigantic mirrors, right? And they build the mirrors on these like massively hydraulically actuated platforms of millions of tiny pistons that are underneath the mirror. And the mirror itself is like this flexible hexagon thing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so the pistons all hold it in its perfect concave shape. But then when they're looking at the night sky, because there's atmospheric disturbances going on, so they shine a laser, a really bright laser, up into the direction that they want to look, and they look at how the laser fluctuates, and they counteract that with all these little pistons in the mirror.
Oh my god.
And it
So
clears
just
up the
cleans
image.
up
Yeah, it subtracts the fucking atmospheric disturbances that they see from the laser. It just subtracts it using the mirror. Just it's badass. I'm just like, holy shit, that's genius. That's fucking
Damn.
genius.
That is really freaking cool.
It's like the concept of like noise canceling headphones.
Right.
Right. You're doing it with light.
That's freaking awesome.
But in order to hear the noise of the atmosphere, they point a laser at it. And since they know the precise frequency of the laser, they can see all the little fluctuations being caused by the atmosphere, and then they can subtract it from the. Yeah.
That's definitely pretty cool. I love stuff like that, man.
There's some pretty good short YouTube videos on building giant telescope mirrors. That where they show you that, they show you these huge things and like, oh, this cost $10 billion and blah, 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 and they're fucking showing you this enormous mirror, and it's like, 130 feet across or whatever. And like they have to move it to the top of the mountain very fucking slowly, and then they get up there, but then they show you when they put it in place, and they got the laser going, and the mirror is actually rippling like water. And when you're looking at it, you know that you're looking at like a model of what's happening in the atmosphere in reverse on the mirror. It's going.
So the atmosphere is actually lensing the light.
Yeah, like most of the reason we see twinkling and all that shit from the stars is because of the atmosphere. Like there's weird little, hot and cold things passing, and it's lensing it. And
So is that the same like when you're looking through, like say there's a fire, you're looking above it,
Yeah.
past it,
Yeah,
and there's all the rippling.
yeah. Or the sound, like something drives behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's basically that, like these hot and cold layers up there that are
Yeah.
shifting and stuff.
It's like the sun does.
I need to get some shades, some fire shades like that, where I can look through fires and see clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, it shines the laser out and fucking cancels it out. See right through that fire. No, that's a good idea. Like, just think of like sunglasses that could do that, or you could look up there and like it could shoot a laser and then like sort of cancel out the fucking atmospheric disturbances, so you can really see the stars really clearly.
Yeah,
just
that'd be
just
awesome.
by the naked eye. You know?
They wouldn't be sunglasses, bro. They'd be
Oh, yeah,
star
star
glasses.
glasses, space glasses. Yeah.
Dude, that's really badass. I want to go look through one of those telescopes.
Yeah. So okay, before we finish out, let's we have been building a pyramid
Yep.
by hand, dry laid.
Oh my god, my back hurts.
Yeah, it's backbreaking work.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it for 8 hours, but you know the Egyptians, butt flaps, dedication, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 20 fucking years.
Yeah. So we were talking about this, like we dry laid it or dry stacked all these rocks around this big freaking concrete thing, and kind of angled them in. So I've been calling it a pyramid. And we've had to go get these rocks from way far away, not 500 miles,
Right.
or however far. I don't even.
Yeah, the Aswan granite was 500 miles away.
Right.
And then the Wales granite for the Stonehenge is 500 miles away.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just basically up on a hill,
Yeah.
and it's
Maybe
freaking
half
hard.
a mile.
And we have all these machines and everything, and it's freaking hard. And then we finally get it all stacked up and everything, and we're like, this is all of these rocks. Is probably, if you put them all together, get one of the big rocks.
Right. Well, we were thinking like maybe 5 tons of rocks. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I need to check that dump truck because I have filled it up quite a few times. But I haven't used all the rocks either.
Right.
Still got a big pile to haul off.
Yeah.
But still,
It is not going to be 100 tons, which is
No.
like one block of granite in the Great Pyramid. You know, it's not going to be 20 tons probably.
yeah, it's
Most of the like single like the core blocks of the Great Pyramid are like 1, 2 to 5 tons. You know, some of them are 10, but most of them are like 2, 4, 5. So maybe 2 of those. Maybe.
But it is a pain in the ass. And yeah, we were just saying, like, take all of these rocks, put them into one rock, and you have to set that one.
Yeah.
In 2 minutes.
Right. Fuck that. After you got to drag it up the ramp.
Right. They had to set a stone like every two
Yeah.
minutes for
Yeah.
20 years. That's just insane.
Yeah. Well,
It's
that 20-year time limit is because of Khufu's reign.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. This is what I'm pointing out.
Yeah,
It's just like
it's dumb.
That's what they say.
Dun-dum, 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 dun-dum.
But we're really doing it, folks.
Yeah.
We're building a pyramid, and
And is it Thursday?
we
We've
definitely truncated.
it's a Mastaba.
Yeah, and Thursday we're putting up our first zodiacal
On
marker
the Hill Hinge.
on the Hill Hinge project.
Great Texanian Hill Hinge project.
The 19th will be the day of the Heliacal rising, right when the sun moves into the house of Aries.
It's time for war.
Yeah. So we're gonna go up there before sunrise and mark that.
Yeah, and we're also going to make a compass to the south, right? Or not a compass, a sundial.
Yeah, sundial on the southern marker. And this weekend we're gonna go look at ancient stuff.
That's right.
And we're gonna take
we
some
have
pictures
a field
and-
trip and Snake Bros field trip, research, and possibly get lost and die.
Yeah. So
Yep. So I think that's it for this week, folks. So I keep meaning to I want to kind of record this whole ending thing so that it could be but yes, thank you guys very much. You can
get a hold of us on the blog at brothersoftheserpent.blogspot.com, or you
Email
can
us.
email us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com.
That's right. Thanks to AWAC Productions, Aether Studios, Kyle Allen for the music, Ty Stone for some of the music, and me for some of the music. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, you can go to iTunes. Go on iTunes and give us some 5-star reviews. That would be great. Or any of the other podcast services like Tuned In, Stitcher, Player FM. I just found out that Spotify actually is hosting podcasts now, but there's some kind of weird thing for submitting it. So I'm working on that. So we're not on there yet. But I'm working on it.
All right.
Yeah. So I think that's it, you guys. What was this, episode 44? 44. That's right. So look forward to next week, 45. We got more great stuff and maybe some interviews. Good night, Adamu. Build pyramids. Snakes. With snakes.
Those promises. Our throne is the most mysterious trap